The rain came down so hard that night I could barely see 3 feet in front of me. I was driving through downtown Louisville, Kentucky, heading home after another 18-hour shift at the hospital. My eyes burned from exhaustion. My coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago, and then I saw her. A small figure hunched beneath a tattered umbrella standing at the corner of 4th Street and Broadway. She was holding something in her arms. Flowers. Wilted roses wrapped in newspaper, soaked through by the relentless downpour. I slowed my car. The woman couldn't have been younger than 80. Her gray hair clung to her face in wet strands. Her coat was thin, far too thin for a November storm in Kentucky. But what stopped my heart, what made me pull over and kill my engine, was the way she stared straight ahead. Not at the passing cars, not at the traffic lights, at nothing. Her eyes were clouded, pale and unfocused. She was blind. I sat there for a moment, gripping my steering wheel, watching her through the rain-streaked windshield. Part of me wanted to drive away, to convince myself she wasn't my responsibility, that someone else would help her. But my mother's voice echoed in my head, the same words she'd spoken to me since I was a child. "Marcus, when you see suffering, you don't look away, you step toward it." I stepped out into the rain. The cold hit me immediately, soaking through my scrubs, but I didn't care. I crossed the street and approached her slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Ma'am," I called out gently, "are you all right?" She turned her head toward my voice, and for the first time I saw her face clearly. Deep lines carved into weathered skin, a trembling lower lip, eyes that had seen decades of joy and sorrow now shrouded in milky white. "Just selling flowers, young man," she said. Her voice was soft, almost musical despite the tremor. "Would you like to buy one? Only $2. I looked at the roses in her arms. There were maybe 30 of them, all drooping, petals falling away like tears. "How long have you been out here?" I asked. She hesitated. "Since this morning." "Since this morning. It was nearly 11 at night. Have you eaten anything?" She didn't answer, but the way her hands trembled told me everything. I reached into my wallet and pulled out every bill I had, $63. "I'll take all of them," I said. Her clouded eyes widened. "All of them? But sir, that's—" "Please," I interrupted. "Let me." I pressed the money into her cold, fragile hands. She counted the bills by touch, her fingers moving with practiced precision. And then she started to cry, not loud sobs, just quiet tears rolling down her cheeks, mixing with the rain. "God bless you," she whispered. "God bless you, young man." I took the flowers from her arms, but I didn't walk away. I couldn't. "Where do you live?" I asked. "Let me drive you home." She shook her head quickly, fear flashing across her face. "No, no, I can't. He doesn't like visitors." Something cold settled in my stomach, something darker than the rain. "Who?" I pressed gently. "Who doesn't like visitors?" She fell silent, and in that silence I heard something that would haunt me for weeks. A car horn blared from across the street. Loud, angry, impatient. The old woman flinched like she'd been struck. "I have to go," she said, her voice suddenly urgent. Thank you for everything." And before I could stop her, she turned and walked into the darkness. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain pound against my window. Those flowers sat on my kitchen counter, wilted, dying, but I couldn't bring myself to throw them away. Something was wrong, the fear in her voice, the way she flinched at that car horn, the trembling that went beyond cold and hunger. I'd seen fear like that before. In my years as an emergency room nurse, I'd treated countless patients who carried invisible wounds. Bruises hidden beneath long sleeves, flinches at sudden movements, eyes that darted toward the door whenever it opened. That old woman was afraid of someone. The next morning, I drove back to that same corner. She wasn't there. I waited. An hour, then two. I asked the owner of a nearby coffee shop if he'd seen her. "The blind lady with the flowers," he nodded slowly. "Yeah, she's out here most days, rain or shine. Been coming for about 3 months now." 3 months? Started around August, I think. Sweet woman, real sweet. But I've never seen anyone pick her up. She just disappears around 9 or 10 every night. I thanked him and walked back to my car, my mind racing. 3 months of standing on a street corner, selling flowers she could barely see, and whether that would break most people half her age. Why? I needed to know. For the next week, I returned to that corner every evening after my shift. Sometimes she was there, sometimes she wasn't. When she was, I bought flowers, all of them, every time. She began to recognize my voice. "It's you again," she said one night, a small smile breaking through her weariness. "The young man who buys all my flowers." "My name is Marcus," I told her. "Marcus Williams, Marcus." She repeated it like she was committing it to memory. "That's a good name, strong. What's your name?" She hesitated. Elena Davis." "It's nice to meet you properly, Elena." She laughed softly, and for a moment I saw glimpses of who she must have been before the blindness, before the street corner, before whatever had driven her to this. You're a kind soul, Marcus, she said. Reminds me of my late husband, Henry. He was a good man, too. How long has he been gone? Her smile faded. 8 years now, feels like yesterday. Feels like forever. We talked for nearly an hour that night. She told me about her life, about growing up in a small town in Tennessee, about meeting Henry at a church picnic when she was 17, about raising their daughter, Patricia, in a little house with a garden full of roses. That's why I sell roses, she admitted. They remind me of home. But when I asked about her daughter, about where she lived now, Alina's warmth vanished. Patricia is gone, she said flatly. Gone? She passed away 5 years ago. Cancer took her quick. I felt my heart break for this woman, losing her sight, losing her husband, losing her only child. I'm so sorry, Alina. She nodded slowly, her clouded eyes glistening with unshed tears. But you still have family, I asked carefully. Someone who takes care of you. Her hands tightened around her remaining flowers. My grandson, she said quietly. Derek, he looks after me now. The way she said it, the way her voice dropped. I knew then. Whatever was happening to Alina Davis, her grandson was at the center of it. It took me 2 more weeks to convince Alina to let me drive her home. I don't want to be a burden, she kept saying. You've already done so much. But finally, on a particularly cold December evening, she relented. Just this once, she whispered. But you have to leave before he sees you. I helped her into my car, carefully buckling her seatbelt like she was made of glass. She directed me through the streets of Louisville, her memory sharper than any GPS. Turn left here, right at the stoplight, straight until you see the old water tower. We ended up in a neighborhood I knew well, Portland, one of the roughest parts of the city. The house she pointed to was small, paint peeling, lawn overgrown. A rusted pickup truck sat in the driveway. This is it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at the house, at the darkened windows, at the broken porch steps. Alina, who lives here with you? Just Derek. She fumbled with her seatbelt, suddenly eager to leave. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Wait. I reached out and gently touched her arm. I need to ask you something. She froze. Does Derek hurt you? The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. He's my grandson, she finally said. He's all I have left. That doesn't answer my question. Her lower lip trembled, her hands shook, and when she finally spoke, her voice cracked with decades of pain. He wasn't always like this. When he was a boy, he was so sweet, so gentle, just like his mother. What happened? Patricia's death broke him. He started drinking, then the pills came, then he just wasn't Derek anymore. Tears rolled down her weathered cheeks, and I felt rage building in my chest. Alina, you don't have to live like this. Where else would I go? She laughed bitterly. I'm blind, I'm 83, I can't work, I can't drive, I can't even make my own food anymore. Derek is, he's all I have. But the flowers, why are you selling flowers in the rain? She swallowed hard. Pay for his debts. He owes money to people, bad people. They threaten to hurt him, so I sell flowers, every day, rain or shine, until I make enough. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. This woman, this blind, elderly woman, standing on street corners for 15 hours a day, in rain, in cold, in exhaustion, to protect a grandson who was supposed to protect her. How much does he owe? Alina shook her head. Too much, far too much. How much? Alina, she was quiet for a long moment. $20,000. The number hung in the air between us, $20,000. That was why she stood in the rain. That was why she sold wilted roses for $2 each. That was why she never complained, never asked for help, never stopped. Because she loved him, even though he'd stopped loving her back. I looked at that broken house, at the shadows moving behind the curtains, and I made a decision. I was going to help Alina Davis, no matter what it took. Alina, I said slowly, I need you to trust me. She turned her clouded eyes toward my voice, searching for something she couldn't see. Why? She whispered. Why do you care about an old woman you barely know? I thought about my own grandmother, about how she'd raised me when my parents couldn't, about how she'd loved me when I was unlovable. Because someone should, I said. Over the next month, I became part of Alina's life. I visited her every few days, bringing groceries, medications, anything she needed. I learned her routines, her favorite songs, the way she hummed hymns while arranging her flowers. But I also learned about Derek. He was 34 years old, unemployed, and deeply addicted to opioids. The first time I saw him, I was dropping off groceries at the back door while he was out. But he came home early. He was tall, gaunt, with hollow eyes and a permanent scowl carved into his face. When he saw me on the porch, he exploded. Who the hell are you? I'm a friend of Alina's. She doesn't have friends, get out. He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong, and shoved me toward the steps. Derek, stop. Alina's voice called from inside. He's just helping me. I told you no visitors. He turned on her and I saw something flash in his eyes, something cruel, something broken. I stepped between them. Don't speak to her like that. Derek laughed, a cold, hollow sound. You don't know anything about us, pretty boy. This is family business. Stay out of it. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to grab him by the collar and shake him until he understood what he was doing to this woman who'd sacrificed everything for him. But I didn't, because that wasn't what Alina needed. I'll go, I said quietly, but I'm coming back. The hell you are. I looked past Derek, meeting Alina's clouded gaze. I'm coming back, I repeated, and I did again and again. Derek hated me. He threatened me. He told me to stay away, but Alina needed someone in her corner and I wasn't going anywhere. Then came the night that changed everything. I was working the late shift when my phone buzzed, an unknown number. Marcus. Alina's voice was trembling. Marcus, please, please come. Alina, what's wrong? He's gone crazy. He's destroying everything. I don't know what to do. I could hear crashing in the background, glass shattering, Derek screaming. Stay away from him, I said, already running to my car. Hide somewhere, I'm on my way. I broke every speed limit between the hospital and her house. When I arrived, the front door was hanging off its hinges. I found Alina in the bathroom, huddled in the corner, trembling, and I found Derek in the living room, surrounded by broken furniture, empty bottles, and the remnants of something that looked like a destroyed shrine. Pictures of his mother, Patricia, shattered on the floor. He was sobbing, not angry, not violent, broken. I killed her, he was whispering. I killed her, I wasn't there, I should have been there. I realized then that Derek wasn't a monster. He was a man consumed by guilt, destroyed by grief, drowning in pain he didn't know how to carry. It didn't excuse what he'd done to Alina, but it explained it. I knelt beside him, ignoring the glass cutting into my knees. Derek, look at me. He raised his head, tears streaming down his gaunt face. You didn't kill your mother, cancer did. I should have been there. You're here now, and that woman in the bathroom, she's still alive, she still needs you. His face crumpled. I've been so horrible to her. I know, but it's not too late to change that. The road to healing was long and brutal. I helped Derek check into a rehabilitation center in Lexington. It wasn't easy. He fought it at first. He relapsed twice. He called me every name in the book, but Alina never gave up on him, and neither did I. I paid off his debts. All $20,000. It took every penny of my savings, but I didn't care. Because Alina Davis had taught me something I'd forgotten in my years of 12-hour shifts and sleepless nights. She taught me that love isn't convenient. It isn't easy. It doesn't always make sense. Love is standing in the rain, selling flowers you can't even see, for someone who's forgotten how to love you back. Love is showing up again and again, even when the door gets slammed in your face. Love is believing in someone's potential, even when they've stopped believing in themselves. 6 months later, Derek completed his program. The first thing he did when he came home was fall to his knees in front of his grandmother. I'm sorry, he sobbed, clutching her hands. I'm so sorry for everything. Alina reached down and touched his face with her weathered fingers, feeling his tears. I know, baby, she whispered. I know. I watched from the doorway, my own eyes blurring with tears. This wasn't a perfect ending. Derek still had battles to fight. Alina's health was still fragile. The road ahead was uncertain, but they had each other, and sometimes that's enough. A year later, I got a call from Derek. Marcus, I need you to come over. Is everything okay? Just come. When I arrived, I found the little house transformed. Fresh paint, new porch steps, a garden bursting with roses. Alina was sitting in a rocking chair on the porch, her face turned toward the sun, and Derek was standing beside her holding a small box. I wanted you to be here for this, he said. He opened the box and pulled out a medal, a nursing medal. I just finished my certification, Derek said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm going to be a nurse like you. I stared at him, speechless. You saved us, Marcus, both of us, and I want to do that for other people. Alina reached for my hand, her clouded eyes shining with tears. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing an old woman in the rain, for not looking away. I squeezed her hand, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. I'd spent years saving lives in an emergency room, but that night on a rain-soaked street corner in Louisville, a blind grandmother selling flowers had saved me. She reminded me why I became a nurse in the first place. Not for the money, not for the recognition, but for the chance to step towards suffering instead of away from it, to see people when they felt invisible, to believe in them when they'd stopped believing in themselves. As I drove home that night, I thought about all the invisible people in this world, the ones standing on street corners, the ones hiding behind closed doors, the ones waiting for someone to notice them, and I made myself a promise. I would keep noticing. I would keep stepping forward, because sometimes the smallest act of kindness can uncover the deepest truths. And sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.